Hello Naughty Steppers, it's time to give you some extra naughty reviews for the month of March 2018. Stuff that I wasn't able to review in full but that I thought would be worthwhile in terms of sharing my thoughts on them with you guys. Just gonna give my opinions on them, maybe introduce you to something that you haven't heard before. Or alternatively provide you with a reason to disagree with me. Couple ground rules with this series that I must lay down before getting on with these short reviews. These are shorter than the full-length ones because there is a lot more ground to cover, so I'll just be identifying my main points with each release. Stuff released on the 28th of March and after will not be reviewed in this video, but the next one. And the releases are covered in alphabetical order by way of artist. Are you ready? 'Cause I'm ready. Let's go! And kicking off this instalment, we have the latest EP from Aimless, released on Crow's Nest Audio, Fantastica. Fantastica. Straight up deathstep carnage with a bit of a bright and jovial twist at points. I mean, you know what you're going to get from a Crow's Nest release, and this one definitely doesn't fail to deliver on the horror front. Some really nice classical inspired moments across the 4 tracks here, whilst also being more gripping and on its feet than your usual deathstep release. Not too strictly structured as well, with some synths flowing over into other bars, creating a kind of pleasant distortion. Obviously, it has its moments that would be a little bit difficult to contend with for the standard music listener, but one that I would definitely recommend to anyone trying to get into the deathstep genre. It's not as incessant, and it actually does really well to incorporate different approaches to production into that terrifying overarching sound. Next up, we have the new Algo EP, and this one is very intriguing. It has a lot of very interesting sequences to it, starting with the opening to the EP itself, with that really animated, Prodigy-esque introduction kicking things off really well with that old school energy. But it still retains the Black Label essence very well with some straight up dark, remorseless dubstep. Yet all the while possessing a character and colour to it that is absent in a lot of releases on that label. So all in all, I think it's a pretty ambitious and vibrant combination of styles. The final song, Impact, is super interesting considering how long it is in juxtaposition with the song's title. I mean, it goes on for a fair bit. I don't think I've heard a dubstep track at this level that is that long for years. But overall, one of the more ear-catching EPs from the collective to date. I don't like any of the songs entirely, but it's a very solid project for sure. Distant but alert tunes on show here from Division, clearly varied but all adhering to a particularly cutesy yet haunting style. All about creating those spacious, vacant atmospheres with a lot of outer-worldly synths and booming kicks. And all of a slow tempo, giving them a sneaky feel as if they're creeping up on you. Getting a bit more heightened and in your face with a couple of tracks here, most notably from Host and Anti-Negative. I'd say you probably have to like this style generally in order to get into the EP, one not too dissimilar to the Woolly Mammoth album that I'm going to discuss in a bit. The Samba track probably being my favourite of the bunch, as the best managed and most accessible. Now this is a beautiful EP from Eddy. A very classic mousetrap project, but definitely one of my favourites from the label in the past few years. Just a really soothing, blissful tone to it throughout, with the odd moment of darkness taking it down that mid-tempo route. Transitioning between stuff sounding like Black Gummy to stuff that is a leaf straight out of Rez's book. Going from complex droey sounds to progressive house, and then further into that mid-tempo structure, as I mentioned earlier, it covers a fair bit. And the track Among the Graves has one of the most stunning melodies that I've heard in a while, a really insane groove to this one from start to finish. If you like deadmau5 and mousetrap generally, then you will love this EP for sure. This is just a very solid, at points grungy house music EP from Etnik, nothing too showy about it. A cheeky 8-bit theme at points, a nice video game fuzziness to it. Jumpy and playful, no real boundaries set for itself in terms of the directions that it goes off in. Just plods along very nicely, decent glitchy techno parts every now and then to give it that extra bit of flair. Definitely recommend if understated house tracks are something that you warm to. I have loved some of Franky Nuts' recent releases, tracks like Infinite and Let's Get It for Circus and Never Say Die respectively. And this EP certainly continues in that vein to large extents. Great energy throughout, mixing large synths and percussion with easy to get into vocals. I'm really enjoying that style. Just the majority of the drops here fail to really take me away. There are also points leading into the drops where the percussion could have been a little bit more emphatic and refined. It's all very well put together, but there's just not enough of it, if that makes sense. It's either that the idea is good but the sounds aren't that great, or the other way round, he never quite gets it spot on. Very, very decent, but nothing quite taking me off my seat here in the way that other tracks of his from the last few months have. I do keep coming back to listening to it, however. I think I just really like the electrified nature of the builds, the energy of it, the brightness. It's just very captivating in that respect. Some lovely moments throughout the 6 tracks as well, the midsection to Infusion probably being my favourite part of the EP. If you like drum and bass, then you must listen to this album from Joe Ford. Dips into other genres every now and then with snippets of dubstep and mid-tempo, bit of glitch hop in there, but certainly not as much as he used to, I'd say. So yeah, pretty simply, if you like drum and bass, then you will really enjoy this. It incorporates both the delicate and the heavy sides of the genre, going through a wealth of different moods and emotions throughout. It's a very well-rounded project. I'll certainly be listening to it more and more as the year progresses. Each time I've checked it out, it's revealed new things, so a worthwhile listen for sure. A very dark and moody album here from Madeaux that sounds a lot like a modern R&B record at some points, with very sombre vocals and deep, gloomy instrumentals. Nothing that truly stands out to me on this album, although there are some very good songs across the 12 tracks. Tunes like Run With It and Afters and Heaven, which for me are the darkest tracks on Burn overall. Not saying that I thought this album would be darker necessarily, I think it gets that across in terms of the sound. Just thought there would be a little more emphasis on faster tempos throughout, because the majority translates into that out of focus trap vibe. Maybe this would have come with less attention on the vocals and more on the instrumentals? But I'm not complaining really, it's pretty much what I expected from Madeaux. I just feel like there could have been a couple more outright heavier tracks on the album. Still, he's someone who, along with the likes of Josh Pan and X&G and A-Glory, whose style I really warm to, and I feel like we need more artists like this, more music of this type. If you are a fan of spooky, eerie, bass-heavy trap music, then this EP from Night Grind is definitely for you. Real consistency to these tracks without anything too flashy about them. Always creating that demented, empty atmosphere through the percussion, with those high-pitched notes throughout lending a dreamy element to the EP overall. Not flashy to the extent that it could be perceived as background music, but it does that job well, it must be said. Now this next one, is it Spleen or Spline? Does anyone know? I think I'm going to go with Spleen. Anyway, it's G. Jones, EPROM-esque music from Spleen here, hard-hitting but simultaneously minimalistic. Earthy, guttural, rattling tribal music. Love how it continually fades in and out of consciousness, alive and reticent in equal measure. Great flow and rhythm to this thing, really taking its time to set a scene within each track. Like a faster version of Burial, I'd say, at points murky and spooky, and others insistent and relentless. Delving into glitch and drum and bass and seemingly everything in between. And a real attention to detail, all working towards this generally haunting vibe. I'd probably say one of the most underrated EPs of the year so far. You should definitely check it out. Brooding, daunting, neuro kind of music here from Sub Yao. Like a slowed down Noisia but to a smaller degree, less going on and just seeming more compact in its delivery as a result. The collaboration with Razat at the beginning of the EP being a prime example of this, just one repeated hit of chunky mid-tempo sound after another. Dips a little at points by way of its impact across the 3 tracks, going into the more mellow and experimental method of production every now and then. But overall, very meaty, very thick, all-encompassing music that really hits in the right spots. If you know what I mean. Now this album from Woolly Mammoth is one extensive, spooky, alienating story. Obviously separated by songs, I think around 18 of them, but you could listen to this in its entirety as one long thing. Vintage, new wave, industrial, underground, experimental music. Very unsettling, 808 beats with a lot of glitchy effects layered over the top. Delving into more hip-hop inspired stuff at various points. Mind-numbing, quietly visceral, softly aggressive, politely fierce. I also really love the title of this album, Filling Spots, which would be a very intricate process considering how small a spot is. So maybe this is a reference to the intricacies of the music on show here, and I must say, yeah, it's a very fitting title in that respect. A really interesting album, forces you to find the goodness in it because of its unorthodox approach. I mean, Willy Mammoth is really leading the way at the moment in terms of this style of music. If you enjoyed this album, then I would check out Noah the Boy and Zerotep, and for a heavier version, then I would check out Levitate. And so that brings the March 2018 volume of Extra Nawties to a close. Thank you very much, and as always, for tuning in. As you can see, not the most fruitful month for the dark electronic music scene, but there were some very good releases over the past 30 days or so. EPs from the likes of Sudden Death, Eddy and Dr. Ozzy, not to mention the debut album from Dodge and Fusky, my reviews of which should be somewhere next to my head, so check those out if you're interested. But with regards to the EPs and albums reviewed in this video, which ones did you enjoy? Which ones hadn't you heard of before? Are there any that I should have included? Let me know in the comments down below. Beyond that, if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, hitting the notification bell on the way so you can be notified whenever I upload to the Nawtystep channel. There should also be a link to another Extra Nawties roundup video if you're looking for some extra dark electronic music tunage to sink your teeth into. Links to all the projects discussed in this video are in the description box down below, as well as all the Nawtystep social media accounts, so get following those if you haven't already. And lastly, if it's naughty, then you know guys, so be sure, as always, to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see you folks in the next one. Peace out.